to Heavy Storytelling. How are you doing today? We are going to be reading the Bible. Then we are going to be doing Ben-Hur. But before we do Ben-Hur, we're doing the synopsis.
You really should have cleaned your face.
Yeah.
All right.
Here's Heavy.
That's what happens with ice cream. Hi. How are we doing? Okay, so we started Hebrews last night. And that's how we know that Jesus liked coffee, because he brews.
Wow.
All right, so chapter 2. This is the English Standard Version of the New Testament. Chapter 2. Therefore, we must pay much closer attention to what we have heard, lest we drift away from it. For since the message declared by angels proved to be reliable, and every transgression or disobedience received a just retribution, how shall we escape if we neglect such a great salvation? It was declared at first by the Lord, and it was attested to us by those who heard, while God also bore witness by signs and wonders and various miracles, and by gifts of the Holy Spirit distributed according to his will. For it was not to angels that God subjected the world to come of which we are speaking. It has been testified somewhere, "What is man that you are mindful of him? Or the Son of Man that you care for him? You made him for a little while lower than the angels. You have crowned him with glory and honor, putting everything in subjection under his feet." Now, in putting everything in subjection to him, he left nothing outside his control. At present, we do not yet see everything in subjection to him. But we see him who for a little while was made lower than the angels, namely, Jesus, crowned with glory and honor because of the suffering of death, so that by the grace of God he might taste death for everyone. For it was fitting that he, for whom and by whom all things exist, in bringing many sons to glory, should make the founder of their salvation perfect through suffering. For he who sanctifies and those who are sanctified all have one source. That is why he is not ashamed to call them brothers, saying, I will tell of your name to my brothers. In the midst of the congregation I will sing your praise. And again, I will put my trust in him. And again, behold, I and the children God has given me. Since therefore the children share in flesh and blood, he himself likewise partook of the same things, that through death he might destroy the one who has the power of death, that is the devil, and deliver all those who through fear of death were subject to lifelong slavery. Let me read that verse again. Actually, I'll start at verse 14. Since therefore the children share in flesh and blood, he himself likewise partook of the same things, that through death he might destroy the one who has the power of death, that is the devil, and deliver all those who through fear of death were subject to lifelong slavery. For surely it is not angels that he helps, but he helps the offspring of Abraham. Therefore he had to be made like his brothers in every respect, so that he might become a merciful and faithful high priest in the service of God, to make propitiation for the sins of the people. For because he himself has suffered when tempted, he is able to help those who are being tempted. That's the end of Hebrews chapter 2. We'll read Hebrews 3 tomorrow. Now it is time for the synopsis. So far I'm showing that Jennifer Joy Stockton Sneathen is watching. Thank you so much for being there. And I hope that Granny Bear, I understand Rebecca has to work in the morning, so if it is what it is. But go ahead and hit like, make it a heart if you want to. Watch this on YouTube. Granny Bear said that she watched the horse race or listened to the horse race on YouTube after watching it on Facebook tonight. What on earth? Golly, you guys.
What?
Y'all are just crowding me. She said that she watched it on YouTube and it was even better the second time. So, all right, I'm going to go so that y'all can do...
Here is the synopsis.
Y'all are creepy. Don't do that.
Okay, you just stop that. So what happened in the last chapter was this big horse race happened, and they got ready for it, and then it happened, and Ben-Hur won because he, at the last moment, he used a special thing that he had prepared to destroy Masala's chariot, and he's not sure if Masala's alive or dead. And there is this other guy who crashed. Yeah, that's about it, right?
Yeah, I think so. Sure.
And they're about to collect the money.
Are they?
Well, they should be.
Maybe they are. I don't know.
I mean, it
All right,
was a lot of money.
We'll have to see. All right. Hi, thank you, one person. Hello, lovely Kimmy. Yes, lovely Kimmy. All right. The Invitation of Iris, chapter 15. Hey, Kim, I think Mom's calling you. Oh, Chrissy. Chrissy, I think Mom's calling you. Sorry. It's hard to hear. JJ, is Chrissy in there? Oh, never mind. I'm going to just mind my own business and keep on reading. All right. All right. This is chapter 15, The Invitation of Iris. Ben-Hur tarried across the river with Idilne, for at midnight, as previously determined, they would take the road by which the caravan, then 30 hours out, had pursued. The sheik was happy. His offers of gifts had been royal, but Ben-Hur had refused everything, insisting that he was satisfied with the humiliation of his enemy. The generous dispute was long continued. Think, the sheik would say, what thou hast done for me. In every black tent down to the Aqaba and to the ocean and across to the Euphrates and beyond to the Sea of the Scythians, I think that's the Caspian Sea, by the way, the renown of my Myra and her children will go, and they who sing of them will magnify me and forget that I am in the wane of life, and all the spears now masterless will come to me, and my sword hands multiply past counting. Thou dost not know what it is to have sway of the desert, such as will now be mine. I tell thee, it will bring tribute incalculable from commence, and immunity from kings. I, by the sword of Solomon, doth my messenger seek favor for me of Caesar. That will he get, yet nothing. Nothing? And Ben-Hur would answer, Nay, sheik, have I not thy hand and heart? Let thy increase of power and influence inure to the king who comes. Who shall say it was not allowed thee for him? In the work I am going to do I may have great need. Saying no now will leave me to ask of thee with better grace hereafter. In the midst of the controversy of the kind, two messengers arrived, Malak and one unknown. The former was admitted first. The good fellow did not attempt to hide his joy over the event of the day. But coming to that with which I am charged, he said, the master Simonides sends me to say that, upon the adjournment of the games, some of the Roman faction made haste to protest against payment of the money prize. Idilne started up, crying in his shrillest tones, By the splendor of God, the East shall decide whether the race was fairly won. Nay, good sheik, said Malik, the editor has paid the money. 'Tis well. When they said Ben-Hur struck Messala's wheel, the editor laughed and reminded them of the blow the Arabs had at the turn of the goal. And what of the Athenian? He is dead. Dead? Echoed Ilderim. What fortune these Roman monsters have. Messala escaped? Escaped? Yes, O sheik, with his life. But it shall be a burden to him. The physicians say he will live, but never walk again. Ben-Hur looked silently up to heaven. He had a vision of Messala, chair-bound like Simonides, and like him going abroad on the shoulders of servants. The good man had abode well, but what would this one with his pride and ambition? Simonides bade me say further, Malik continued, Sanballat is having trouble. Drusus and those who signed with him referred the question of paying the 5 talents they lost to the consul Maxentius, and he has referred it to Caesar. Messala also has refused his losses, and Sanballat, in imitation of Drusus, went to the consul, where the matter is still in advisement. The better Romans say the Protestants shall not be excused, and all the adverse factions join with them. The city rings with the scandal. What says Simonides? Asked Ben-Hur. The master laughs and is well pleased. If the Roman pays, he is ruined. If he refuses to pay, he is dishonored. The imperial policy will decide the matter. To offend the East would be a bad beginning with the Parthians. To offend Sheik Ilderim would be to antagonize the desert, over which lie all Maxentius' lines of operation. Wherefore Simonides bade me tell you to have no disquiet. Messala will pay. Ilderim was at once restored to his good humor. Let us be off now, he said, rubbing his hands. The business will do well with Simonides. The glory is ours. I will order the horses. Stay, said Malik. I left a messenger outside. Will you see him? By the splendor of God, I forgot him. Malik retired and was succeeded by a lad of gentle manner and delicate appearance, who knelt upon one knee and said winningly, Iris, the daughter of Balthazar, well known to good Sheik Ilderim, hath instructed me with a message to the Sheik, who, she saith, will do her great favor, so he receive her congratulations on account of the victory of his four. The daughter of my friend is kind, said Ilderim with sparkling eyes. Dost thou give her this jewel in sign of the pleasure I have from her message? He took a ring from his finger as he spoke. I will as you sayest, O Sheik, the lad replied, and continued. The daughter of the Egyptian charged me further. She prays the good Sheik Ilderim to send word to the youth Ben-Hur that her father hath taken residence for a time in the palace of Idilne, where she will receive the youth after the 4th hour tomorrow. And if, with her congratulation, Sheik Ilderim will accept her gratitude for this other favor done, she will be ever so pleased. The sheik looked at Ben-Hur, whose face was suffused with pleasure. What will you? He asked. By your leave, O sheik, I will seek the fair Egyptian. Ilderim laughed and said, Shall not a man enjoy his youth? Then Ben-Hur answered the messenger, Say to her who sent you that I, Ben-Hur, will see her at the palace of Idilne, wherever that may be, tomorrow at noon. The lad arose and, with silent salute, departed. At midnight, Ilderim took the road, having arranged to leave a horse and a guide for Ben-Hur, who was to follow him. Chapter 16. In the Palace of Idilne. Going next day to fill his appointment with Iris, Ben-Hur turned from the Omphalos, which was in the heart of the city, into the colonnade of Herod, and came shortly to the palace of Idilne. From the street he passed first into a vestibule, on the sides of which were stairways under cover, leading up to a portico. Winged lions sat by the stairs. In the middle there was a gigantic ibis, spouting water over the floor. The lions, ibis, wall, and floor were reminders of the Egyptians. Everything, even the balustrading of the stairs, was of massive gray stone. Above the vestibule and covering the landing of the steps arose the portico, a pillared grace so light, so exquisitely proportioned, it was at that period hardly possible of conception except by a Greek. Of marble snowy white, its effect was that of a lily dropped carelessly upon a great bare rock. Ben-Hur paused in the shade of the portico to admire its tracery and finish, and the purity of its marble. Then he passed on into the passage, into the palace. Ample folding doors stood open to receive them. The passage into which he first entered was high, but somewhat narrow. Red tiling formed the floor, and the walls were tinted to correspond. Yet this plainness was a warning of something beautiful to come. He moved on slowly, all his faculties in repose. Presently he would be in the presence of Iris. She was waiting for him, waiting with song and story and badinage, sparkling, fanciful, capricious, with smiles which glorified her glance, and glances which lent voluptuous suggestion to her whisper. She had sent for him the evening of the boat ride on the lake in the orchard of palms. She had sent for him now, and he was going to her in the beautiful palace of Idilne. He was happy and dreamful rather than thoughtless. The passage brought him to a closed door, in front of which he paused, and as he did so, the broad leaves began to open of themselves, without creak or sound or lock or latch or touch of the foot or finger. The singularity was lost in the view that broke upon him. Standing in the shade of the dull passage and looking through the doorway, he beheld the atrium of a Roman house, roomy and rich to a fabulous degree of magnificence. How large the chamber was cannot be stated, because of the deceit there is in exact proportions. Its depth was vista-like, something never to be said of an equal interior. When he stopped to make survey and looked down upon the floor, he was standing upon the breast of a Leda, represented as caressing a swan, and looking farther he saw the whole floor was similarly laid in mosaic pictures of mythological subjects, and there were stools and chairs, each a separate design, and a work of art exquisitely composed, and tables much carven, and here and there couches which were invitations of themselves. The articles of furniture which stood out from the walls were duplicated on the floor distinctly, as if they floated upon unrippled water. Even the paneling of the walls, the figures upon them in painting and bas-relief, and the fresco of the ceiling were reflected on the floor. The ceiling curved up toward the center, where there was an opening through which the sunlight poured without hindrance, and the sky, ever so blue, seemed in hand-reach. The impluvium under the opening was guarded by bronzed rails. The gilded pillars supporting the roof at the edges of the opening shone like flame where the sun struck them, and their reflections beneath them seemed to stretch to infinite depth. And there were candelabra, quaint and curious, and statuary and vases, the whole making an interior that would have benefited well the house on the Palatine hill which Cicero bought of Crassus, or that of other yet more famous for extravagance, the Tusculan villa of Scaurus. Still, in his dreamful mood, Ben-Hur sauntered about, charmed by all he beheld and waiting. He did not mind a little delay. When Iris was ready, she would come or send a servant. In every well-regulated Roman house, the atrium was the reception chamber for visitors. Twice, thrice he made the round. As often he stood under the opening in the roof and pondered the sky and its azure depth. Then, leaning against a pillar, he studied the distribution of light and shade and its effects. Here a veil diminishing objects, there a brilliance exaggerating others. Yet nobody came. Time, or rather the passage of time, began at length to impress itself upon him, and he wondered why Iris stayed so long. Again he traced out the figures upon the floor, but not with the satisfaction the first inspection gave him. He paused often to listen. Directly impatience blew a little fevered breath upon his spirit. Next time it blew stronger and hotter, and at last he woke to a consciousness of the silence which held the house in thrall, and the thought of it made him uneasy and distrustful. Still, he put the feeling off with a smile and a promise. Oh, she is giving the last touch to her eyelids, or she is arranging the chapelet for me. She will come presently, more beautiful of the delay. He sat down then to admire the candelabrum, a bronze plinth on rollers, filigree on the slides and edges, the post at one end, and on the end opposite it an altar and a female celebrant. The lamp rests swinging by delicate chains from the extremities of drooping palm branches, altogether a wonder in its way. But the silence would obtrude him. He listened even as he looked at the pretty object. He listened, but there was not a sound. The palace was still as a tomb. There might be a mistake. No, the messenger had come from the Egyptian, and this was the palace of Idilne. Then he remembered how mysteriously the door had opened, so soundlessly, so of itself. He would see. He went to the same door. Though he walked ever so lightly, the sound of his stepping was loud and harsh, and he shrank from it. He was getting nervous. The cumbrous Roman lock resisted his first effort to raise it, and the second. The blood chilled in his cheeks. He wrenched with all his might. In vain. The door was not even shaken. A sense of danger seized him, and for a moment he stood irresolute. Who in Antioch had the motive to do him harm? Messala. And this palace of Idilne? He had seen Egypt in the vestibule, Athens in the snowy portico, but here in the Atrium was Rome. Everything about him betrayed Roman ownership. True, the site was on the great thoroughfare of the city, a very public place in which to do him violence, but for that reason it was more accordant with the audacious genius of his enemy. The atrium underwent a change with all its elegance and beauty. It was no more than a trap. Apprehension always paints in black. The ideal irritated Ben-Hur. There were many doors on the right and left of the atrium, leading doubtless to sleeping chambers. He tried them, but they were all firmly fastened. Knocking might bring a response. Ashamed to make outcry, he betook himself to a couch, and lying down, tried to reflect. All too plainly he was a prisoner. But for what purpose, and by whom? If the work were Messala's, he sat up, looked about, and smiled defiantly. There were weapons in every table, but birds had been starved in golden cages. Not so would he. The couches would serve him as battering rams, and he was strong, and there was such increase of might in rage and despair. Messala himself could not come. He would never walk again. He was a cripple like Simonides. Still, he could move others, and where were there not others to be moved by him? Ben-Hur arose and tried the doors again. Once he called out, the room echoed so that he was startled. With such calmness as he could assume, he made up his mind to wait a time before attempting to break a way out. In such a situation, the mind has its ebb and flow of disquiet, with intervals of peace between. At length, how long, though, he could not have said, he came to the conclusion that the affair was an accident or mistake. The palace certainly belonged to somebody. It must have care and keeping, and the keeper would come. The evening or the night would bring him patience. So concluding, he waited. Half an hour passed, a much longer period to Ben-Hur, when the door which had admitted him opened and closed noiselessly as before, and without attracting his attention. The moment of the occurrence, he was sitting at the farther end of the room. A footstep startled him. At last she has come, he thought, with a throb of relief and pleasure, and arose. The step was heavy and accompanied with the gride and clang of coarse sandals. The gilded pillars were between him and the door. He advanced quietly and leaned against one of them. Presently he heard voices, the voices of men, one of them rough and guttural. What was said he could not understand, as the language was not of the east or south of Europe. After a general survey of the room, the strangers crossed to their left, and were brought into Ben-Hur's view 2 men, one very stout, both tall and both in short tunics. They had not the air of masters of the house or domestics. Everything they saw appeared wonderful to them. Everything they stopped to examine they touched. They were vulgarians. The atrium seemed profaned by their presence. At the same time, their leisurely manner and the assurance with which they proceeded pointed to some right or business. If business, with whom? With much jargon they sauntered this way and that, all the time gradually approaching the pillar by which Ben-Hur was standing. Off a little way, where a slanted gleam of the sun fell with a glare upon the mosaic of the floor, there was a statue which attracted their notice. In examining it, they stopped in the light. The mystery surrounding his own presence in the palace tended, as we have seen, to make Ben-Hur nervous. So now, when in the tall, stout stranger he recognized the Northman whom he had known in Rome and seen crowned on only the day before in the circus as the winning pugilist, when he saw the man's face scarred with the wounds of many battles and embruted by ferocious passions, when he surveyed the fellow's naked limbs, very marvels of exercise and training, and his shoulders of Herculean breadth, a thought of personal danger started a chill along every vein. A sure instinct warned him that the opportunity for murder was too perfect to have come by chance, and here now were the Myrmidons, and their business was with him. He turned an anxious eye upon the Northman's comrade, young, black-eyed, black-haired, and altogether Jewish in appearance. He observed also that both the men were in costume exactly such as professionals of their class were in the habit of wearing in the arena. Putting the several circumstances together, Ben-Hur could not be longer in doubt. He had been lured into the palace with design. Out of reach of aid in this splendid privacy, he was to die. At a loss what to do, he gazed from man to man, while there was enacted within him that miracle of mind by which life is passed before us in awful detail, to be looked at by ourselves as if it were another's, and from the evolvement from a hidden depth, cast up, as it were, by a hidden hand, he was given to see that he had entered upon a new life, different from the old one in this, whereas in that he had been the victim of violences done to him. Henceforth he was to be the aggressor. Only yesterday he had found his first victim. To the purely Christian nature, the presentation would have brought the weakness of remorse. Not so with Ben-Hur. His spirit had its emotions from the teachings of the first lawgiver, not the last and the greatest one. He had dealt punishment, not wrong, to Messala. By permission of the Lord he had triumphed, and he derived faith from the circumstance. Faith, the source of all rational strength, especially strength in peril. Nor did the influence stop there. The new life was made appear to him a mission just begun, and holy as the king to come was holy, and certain as the coming of the king was certain, a mission in which force was lawful, if only because it was unavoidable. Should he, on the very threshold of such an errand, be afraid? He undid the sash around his waist, and, baring his head and casting off his white Jewish gown, stood forth in an undertunic not unlike those of the enemy, and was ready, body and mind. Folding his arms, he placed his back against the pillar, and calmly waited. The examination of the statue was brief. Directly the Northman turned and said something in the unknown tongue. Then both looked at Ben-Hur. A few more words, and they advanced towards him. Who are you? He asked in Latin. The Northman fetched a smile which did not relieve his face of its brutalism, and answered, Barbarians! This is the palace of Idilne. Whom seek you? Stand and answer. The words were spoken with earnestness. The stranger stopped, and in his turn the Northman asked, Who are you? A Roman. The giant laid his head back upon his shoulders. Ha 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 ha! I have heard how a god once came from a cow licking a salted stone, but not even a god can make a Roman of a Jew. The laugh over, he spoke to his companion again, and they moved nearer. Hold, said Ben-Hur, quitting the pillar. One word. They stopped again. A word, replied the Saxon, folding his immense arms around his breast and relaxing the menace beginning to blacken his face. A word. Speak. You are Thord, the Northman. The giant opened his blue eyes. You were Lanista of Rome. Thord nodded. I was your scholar. No, said Thord, shaking his head. By the beard of Ermin, I had never a Jew to make a fighting man of. But I will prove my saying. How? You came here to kill me. That is true. Then let this man fight me singly, and I will make the proof on his body. A gleam of humor shone in the Northman's face. He spoke to his companion, who made answer. Then he replied with the naivety of a diverted child. Wait till I say begin. By repeated touches of his foot, he pushed a couch out on the floor and proceeded leisurely to stretch his burly form upon it. When perfectly at ease, he said simply, Now, begin. Without ado, Ben-Hur walked to his antagonist. Defend thyself, he said. The man, nothing loath, put up his hands. As the two thus confronted each other in approved position, there was no discernible inequality between them. On the contrary, they were like as brothers. To the stranger's confident smile, Ben-Hur opposed an earnestness which, had his skill been known, would have been accepted fair warning of danger. Both knew the combat was to be mortal. Ben-Hur feinted with his right hand. Fainted? Yeah, it means I understand what it means, but the way it's written, it looks like he fainted, but he didn't faint. He basically faked him out. He fainted with his right hand. The stranger warded, slightly advancing his left arm. Ere he could return to guard, Ben-Hur caught him by the wrist in a grip which years at the oar had made terrible as a vice. The surprise was complete, and no time given. To throw himself forward, to push the arm across the man's throat and over his right shoulder, and turn him left side front, to strike surely with the ready left hand, to strike the bare neck under the knee, were but petty divisions of the same act. No need of a second blow. The myrmidon fell heavily, and without a cry, and lay still. Ben-Hur turned to Thord. Ha! What? By the beard of Ermin? The latter cried in astonishment, rising to a sitting posture. Then he laughed. Ha 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 ha! I could not have done it better myself. He viewed Ben-Hur coolly from head to foot, and, rising, faced him with undisguised admiration. It was my trick, the trick I have practiced for 10 years in the school of Rome. You are not a Jew. Who are you? Are we having a good time in there?
Yes. We got stuck.
All right. You knew Arius the Doomvir. Quintus Arius. Yes, he was my patron. He had a son. Yes, said Thord, his battered features lighting dully. I knew the boy. He would have made a king gladiator. Caesar offered him his patronage. I taught him the very trick you played on this one here, the trick impossible except to a hand and arm like mine. It has won me many a crown. I am that son of Arius. Thord drew nearer. Are we okay?
Yes.
Should we continue tomorrow?
Sure. Let's continue
sorry, I'm getting a little distracted. He had a son. Yes, said Thord, his battered fingers lighting dully. I knew the boy. He would have made a king gladiator. Caesar offered him his patronage. I taught him the very trick you played on this one here, a trick impossible except to a hand and arm like mine. It has won me many a crown. I am that son of Ares. Thord drew nearer and viewed him carefully. Then his eyes brightened with genuine pleasure, and, laughing, he held out his hand. Ha 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 ha! He told me I would find a Jew here. A Jew, a dog of a Jew, killing whom was serving the gods. Who told you so? Asked Ben-Hur, taking the hand. He, Messala. Ha 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 ha! When, Thord? Last night. I thought he was hurt. He will never walk again. On his bed he told me between groans. A very vivid portrayal of hate in a few words, and Ben-Hur saw that the Roman, if he lived, would still be capable and dangerous, and follow him unrelentingly. Revenge remained to sweeten the ruined life, therefore the clinging to fortune lost in the wager with Sanballat. Ben-Hur ran the ground over with a distinct foresight of the many ways in which it would be possible for his enemy to interfere with him in the work he had undertaken for the king who was coming. Why not he resort to the Romans' methods? The man hired to kill him could be hired to strike back. It was in his power to offer higher wages. The temptation was strong, and, half yielding, he chanced to look down at his late antagonist, lying still with white upturned face, so like himself. A light came to him, and he asked, Thord, what was Messala to give you for killing me? 1,000 sestertii. You shall have them yet, and so you do now what I tell you. I will add 3,000 more to the sum. The giant reflected aloud. I won 5,000 yesterday from the Roman one. 6. Give me 4, good Ares, 4 more, and I will stand firm for you, though old Thor, my namesake, strike me with his hammer. Make it 4, and I will kill the lying patrician if you say so. I have only to cover his mouth with my hand, thus. He illustrated the process by clapping his hand over his own mouth. I see, said Ben-Hur. 10,000 sestertii is a fortune. It will enable you to return to Rome and open a wine shop near the great circus and live as becomes the first of the Lanisto. The very scars of the giant's face glowed afresh with the pleasure the picture gave him. I will make it 4,000, Ben-Hur continued, and in what you shall do for the money there will be no blood on your hands. Thord, hear me now. Did not your friend here look like me? I would have said he was an apple from the same tree. Well, if I put on his tunic and dress him in these clothes of mine, and you and I go away together, leaving him here, can you not get your sestertii from Messala all the same? You have only to make him believe it me that is dead. Thord laughed till the tears ran into his mouth. Ha 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 ha! 10,000 sestertii were never won so easily, and a wine shop by the great circus, all for a lie without blood in it. Ha ha ha! Give me thy hand, O son of Ares. Get on now, and ha ha! If ever you come to Rome, fail not to ask for the wine shop of Thord the Northman. By the beard of Ermin, I will give you the best, though I borrow it from Caesar. They shook hands again, after which the exchange of clothes was effected. It was arranged then that a messenger should go at night to Thord's lodging place with the 4,000 sestertii. When they were done, the giant knocked at the front door. It opened to him, and passing out of the atrium, he led Ben-Hur into a room adjoining, where the latter completed his attire from the coarse garments of the dead pugilist. They separated directly in the omphalos. Fail not, O son of Ares. Fail not the wine shop near the great circus. Ha ha ha! By the beard of Ermin, there was never fortune gained so cheap. The gods keep you. Upon leaving the atrium, Ben-Hur gave a last look at the myrmidon as he lay in the Jewish vestments and was satisfied. The likeness was striking. If Thord kept faith, the cheat was a secret to endure forever. At night, in the house of Simonides, Ben-Hur told the good man all that had taken place in the palace of Idilne, and it was agreed that after a few days public inquiry should be set afloat for the discovery of the whereabouts of the son of Areus. Eventually, the matter was to be carried boldly to Maxentius. Then, if the mystery came not out, it was concluded that Messala and Gratus would be at rest and happy, and Ben-Hur free to betake himself to Jerusalem to make search for his lost people. At the leave-taking, Simonides sat in his chair out on the terrace overlooking the river, and gave his farewell and the peace of the Lord with the impressment of a father. Esther went with the young man to the head of the steps. "If I find my mother, Esther, thou shalt go to her at Jerusalem, and be a sister to Tirzah." And with the words he kissed her. Was it only a kiss of peace? He crossed the river next to the late quarters of Idilne, where he found the Arab who was to serve him as guide. The horses were brought out. "This one is thine," said the Arab. Ben-Hur looked, and lo, it was Aldebaran, the swiftest and brightest of the sons of Mira, and next to Sirius, the beloved of the sheik. And he knew the old man's heart came to him along with the gift. The corpse in the atrium was taken up and buried by night, and as part of Messala's plan, a courier was sent off to Gratus to make him at rest by the announcement of Ben-Hur's death, this time past question. Ere long a wine shop was opened near the Circus Maximus, with the inscription over the door, "Thord the Northman." The end of Book 5. Tomorrow we can start Book 6. Chapter 1, The Tower of Antonia, cell number 6. And the first word is hour.
So let me get this straight. He went to a palace
To meet Iris.
yeah, and said it was a setup?
Yes, he went to a palace to meet Iris, and instead it was a setup. Messala had sent some people to have him killed, and Ben-Hur knew one of the people, and the other person, in one-on-one combat, Ben-Hur killed with a special move that he had learned from the other guy a long time ago, and I don't know if he intentionally killed him or if it like he just had to do it because.
My question is whether or not Iris intentionally set him up.
I was wondering that too. Okay, so what Mom just said was the question is whether or not Iris set them up. I do not know the answer to that question. That's a good question. Possibly we have 3 more books left in this adventure epic novel. Possibly the answer to that question will be gleaned out of this. We have less than 200 pages now. So we are about 2/3 of the way through this book, and I hope that you're enjoying it. I know I am. It's quite a thrilling ride, and we will see you again next time for more Heavy D storytelling. God bless you. Have a great night.